Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to another little video on the Empress Effects Zoia, the absolutely amazing patchable digital synthesizer in a little box with a unique grid interface where the only limitation is your imagination and the CPU, of course. Today I'm using it together with my MIDI Fighter Twister because I'm going to show you the next version of my FM patch. Now it's not a finished patch, maybe it never will be finished, but it's always going to be a work in progress because I'm trying out different ways of working with FM synthesis on the Zoia and different ways of creating interesting sounds. And as you might know, if you know anything about FM synthesis, is that there are lots of variables involved and it can be quite convoluted. So I'm trying to create an FM synth, I suppose, out of the Zoia that I can work with and experiment a little bit with different sounds. Now, the main thing you need in order to do that, the basic components, are what in FM synthesis are known as operators. And that sounds fancy, but basically all that means is an oscillator connected to a VCA that is controlled by an ADSR or some kind of envelope. So this is an oscillator, sine wave oscillator. That's classic FM territory, of course, using only sine waves. You can use other waves, but that will change the sound quality quite significantly. I might add features to do with that later, but at the moment I'm using only sine waves. This is the main operator known as the carrier. This is the one that is connected to the output. And there are two more operators here, and they are not connected to the output, but they are connected to a connection matrix, and I'll get back to that in a moment. There are also two additional modules on this page, and they are quantizer modules. And that is because when you're doing FM synthesis, if you want to get pleasing, soft, smooth sounds, rather than grating, noisy, rough sounds, you need to have the modulating oscillators at harmonic intervals with the carrier, with the main oscillator. So in order to actually make that a little bit easier, I've added a quantizer for each of these two operators here, so that they only output notes in C major scale. Then I have what I call my modulation or connection, FM connection matrix, and this is something I haven't seen on FM synths before, but it makes so much sense. What most FM synths do is they present you with a certain limited number of algorithms, which basically just means different ways of patching the operators together. So for instance, you have modulator 1 going into the FM input of modulator 2. Modulator 2 can then go into the FM input of carrier, but also to the input of modulator 1, for instance. That's an algorithm. But if you create a matrix, you have, and of course I've mapped this to the MIDI Fighter Twister now. So what you can, I'll just actually point here on the Fighter Twister, it's easier to visualize. So what we have now is the top row here, the first three knobs, is connected to the output of the carrier. So that's my main oscillator. And the second row here, the three knobs here, are connected to modulator 1, I call it, and this one to modulator 2. And this is the connection strength of the different possible destinations. And the different destinations are carrier, modulator 1, or modulator 2. So, for instance, if I want to take the output of the carrier and feed it back into the carrier FM input, I use this knob here. If I wanted to modulate modulator 1, I use this knob, and modulator 2, this knob. And the same modulator one here, if I wanted to affect the carrier FM input, I use this knob, and this is the connection strength, and then it's modulating itself with this knob, and modulator 2 this knob, and likewise with the third one here, that's modulator 2 into carrier, into modulator 1, and into itself finally. So these are, and that gives us a sort of a way to control different algorithms. You can select your own algorithms very easily, and this is the easiest way to do it on the Zoia, because if you were to do it any other way, you would need quite a complex pattern of multipliers and switches, and a different way to select between them, and actually it would potentially take up more. Actually, I'm not sure it would take up more CPU, but because VCAs, I have to use VCAs to make a connection matrix like this now, and that does use quite a bit as well. But I think this is the easiest way to do it on the Zoia. So the limitations of the Zoia actually forced me to create a new way of doing the algorithms in FM synthesis, and I think it's quite a nice streamlined way of doing it, and it's easy to visualize as well. If you've used something like the FM8, that also has a connection matrix. I just realized yesterday I was playing around with it and haven't looked at it properly before. I just played the sounds in FM8. If you haven't heard of FM8, FM8 is Native Instruments classic FM synthesizer, which can use up to, I don't know how many operators now, 7 or 8 or something. And it has some really nice presets, and lots of people only use the presets, but you can also go and dive in and create your own, and you can do your own connections between the operators as well in the FM8 if you click on the advanced button. And that has a kind of matrix interface. Right, so and then this is my page 2 of my MIDI Fighter Twister. I also have a page 1 which has the all-important ADSR envelopes. So this top line here is for the carrier, then it's for the modulator 1 and then modulator 2. In addition, I have these two knobs here mapped to the frequency offset of modulator 1 and modulator 2. So that is the difference between the carrier and the modulators. Set here, that's the one that's connected to the quantizers. And then I also have a reverb effect that I can switch off here as well, because I use one of these buttons for the reverb length and the other for the mix. I can't remember which is which now, but one of them is doing each job. So that's my MIDI setup. Of course, you can control all these things on the Twister as well, but it's just easier to work with if you use a MIDI controller. So I've set, this is just my MIDI, a page with all my MIDI connections here. Also the other day, by the way, if you have a MIDI Fighter Twister, it is often easier. It can take a while to set up all the different pages of MIDI modules for all the MIDI Fighter Twister. So I did make a sort of a quick patch that people can download on patch storage. I'll just put a link to my video there, so that I've set up 4 pages in a patch on the Zoia that have all the default channel and CC connections from the MIDI Fighter Twister, so it's quick to set up in your own patches. You can copy the page into another patch. You can start with that as a patch, and you can remove the ones you don't need. And that's what I do myself now when I'm working with the MIDI Fighter Twister and with any new patches really on the Zoia, because it's nice to have the possibility of easily creating MIDI control for the patches. Now, was there anything else I wanted to say now? Yes, the connections here for the pitch offset of the modulators, I've done a connection strength of 60, so 60%, so I get a slightly finer resolution. And also that's quite a usable range. I don't really need to go much higher than that. One thing you will notice on the Zoia is if you get beyond a certain point, the modulation actually it just disappears, it becomes inaudible. So 60% is a good range. And another thing is worth noting is that while the outputs of the operators go into the matrix, the output of the matrix going into the FM inputs of the different operators has a connection strength of 200, and that's because I want to be able to drive it a little bit harder than just 100%, well, or 0 decibels. It wanted to go a little bit higher than 0 decibels, which creates a very nice effect. Now, I was planning to maybe put in a filter as well, and I did try that, but I think that it can be a bit distracting from the sort of basic workings of FM. So I think it's more important to focus on ADSRs, and also as a next step for the thing I will do with my patch after making this video will be to add more LFOs. And the way I might do that is to create an LFO and give it, and of course add control for the LFO on the MIDI fighter twister as well, but also perhaps have some sort of method of selecting different destinations as well. Things that are worth trying out when you're working with LFOs and FM synthesis is to let the LFOs affect, for instance, the pitches of the modulators. It is also quite interesting because to let LFOs adjust parameters on the ADSR as well, dynamically as you play. Now, all this is controlled by a keyboard here on the Zoia. Now, if you don't use a MIDI fighter twister or another MIDI controller, of course, you might also have a MIDI controller with knobs and a keyboard, which would be very useful here. Of course, you can use a keyboard to control this. One thing I have done here that's just worth noticing. So the note out of the keyboard is connected to all the different oscillators now, all the operators. The gate out is connected to all the ADSR envelopes, so that they are active when there is a gate, when a note is pushed on the keyboard. And that is pretty much it. That's the whole patch. So let's show you a little bit now how this works, and also I'll show you a little bit how FM affects the sound. So we're starting out now with everything is just zeroed out now. So there are all the envelopes are set to the lowest setting, all the frequency offsets are set to off, the reverb is off, there is no connection between the different oscillators. And let's see. So we just get a little click as we push the keyboard now. So if I start by adjusting the envelope a little bit, so this is the envelope for the carrier, that's the one we're hearing now. So attack, decay, sustain, release. So that's just a pure sine wave. Now let's see, we want to modulate this with modulator 1, for instance. So this is the knob that controls the connection strength between modulator 1 output and the FM input of the carrier. So let's just increase that to about halfway. So not a huge difference yet, but that is because at the moment we don't have an envelope for modulator 1. So this is now just a little click as well. So if we do add a bit more attack, you can start hearing something now. Decay, sustain, release. Of course, now the modulator 1 doesn't have an offset, it's also a sine wave, so this is basically the same as running the output of the oscillator itself into itself. Let's make an offset now. So this is a knob for the offset of modulator 1. can hear a more complex waveform being created. And then we can adjust the parameters a little bit. So if you change the decay, for instance, now on the modulator, so got some nice percussion sounds going here, I think. Okay, so that's because it sounds nice with a bit of reverb. I'll just switch that off again because it's nice to have it off so you can hear exactly the effect now. So this is the simplest kind of FM. It's just one operator modulating another. So what if we want to do something slightly more complex? So let's say that modulator 1 also should modulate itself. And maybe also affect modulator 2. Modulator 2 in turn will go into modulator 1 or carrier as well. And also maybe carrier can modulate modulator 2. So let's do it. Try that one. And because now we don't have an envelope on modulator 2. And there's no offset. Okay, now something is happening. So we're getting those kind of sort of crystalline, glassy kind of sounds that FM is known for. Very good for sort of glassy, metally kind of sounds, very sort of ethereal. But also can get very noisy if you are at inharmonic intervals. There we are, that's an very inharmonic interval there. Now, because of the difference in ADSR envelopes, the FM sort of comes in at different times. FM is very good for sort of plucky, percussive sounds. And bell-like sounds. Of course, with bells, the overtones are inharmonic. Sounds like a slightly a bell with a crack in it. And because now the only oscillator that's connected to the output is the carrier, the ADSR envelope for the carrier is, of course, also the ADSR envelope for what you hear in a way. So you'll notice if I remove the release on the carrier, of course we don't hear the effect of the release on the modulators. If you have a long release on the carrier and none on the modulators, we get that pure sine wave tone again after the release. So the effect of the FM disappears when you release, which can be quite an interesting sound as well. So basically a lot of the stuff you would do with FM has to do with how the different ADSR envelopes interact with each other. Let's try a different algorithm again. Let's see, so remove that. Let's do like so on this one. A bit of self FM on the. Because once you get a very loud connection, quite a hot signal going from the output of one oscillator into the FM input of another, you also get a noise as well. Also, the sound is quite different low down compared to high up. It's almost brassy down here. And I'm not sure what I call this. Like in quite a sort of a badly overblown piccolo flute, I don't know. just the overdrive now from the carrier to itself there. Everything to everything. Quite noisy. Like an overdriven guitar there as well. Yeah, so I think that's I've shown you enough now. I'll upload this to patch storage as well, so you can play around with it if you like. I just thought it was a fun little patch to work with when you're exploring FM sounds. Of course, there's still room for improvements and changes, like including LFOs as well. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, join me on Patreon, all those things, and I will see you next time with more videos about the Zoia, about the MIDI fighter twister, about the Zoia and the MIDI fighter twister together, or something else. Who knows? It depends what I feel like doing next. So if you have any questions about how this patch works, of course, please let me know in the comments. If you find it useful and you enjoy playing with it, then please also let me know. So thanks for watching again, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.